Well, I'm pleased to announce that my multimodal project is finally completed. Took a lot of effort and a lot of time, but I'm really happy with it, and I think I've kind of captured what I wanted to create in the first place. So, I guess a general overview of my topic would be simply I wanted to cover space throughout the semester. It gave us a lot of choice and freedom in what we covered, and I had done a Storify project previously about space and space exploration, so I figured doing the podcast with the same kind of focus would have been really effective. So what I'm going to cover in this reflection is how I took that idea of space as a topic and created a podcast and essentially a series of videos, because I've made two now, about how space exploration and space travel. So the message or the argument and like how it responds to the chaotic moment that we're encountering currently is really focused on the idea of understanding how space travel and aerospace technology is perceived by people my age. So to do this, I created a podcast called The Final Frontier, and I took four of my best friends, and counting myself, so it's five people. We're all similar, all the same age group, interested in similar things, come from a wide array of backgrounds, and we all have a wide opinion on space exploration. And what we did was we just had an open dialogue about a bunch of different topics surrounding the issue. So the reason I feel like this affects the chaotic moment is because there's currently a lot of discoveries and information that we're getting about space travel and all these new discoveries and technological developments that we're encountering that are kind of leading us towards the stars. And in addition to that, I feel like there's a lot of really interesting things in media and popular celebrities right now that talk a lot about space. So examples are like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye the Science Guy. There's movies like The Martian, Interstellar, Gravity. All of these things seem to kind of coalesce into one giant conglomerate, which is all about space. And I think it would have been cool for us to kind of take all of our opinions and see where we all land. So the intended audience, when I was first kind of considering, I knew I wanted to do a space-centric project, and I knew that I wanted my multimodal project to be focused on interstellar travel, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to deliver it initially. So what I did was I talked a lot with other people, and then I conversed with my classmates about different options, and I ended up coming up with an idea to create an e-maze, which is like this kind of, it's a presentation in a 3D space, and I wanted to just put my own information that I had gathered throughout the semester into it and kind of lead people along a journey through space, and hopefully they'd get something out of it. But the more I worked with eMaze, the more I realized that I wanted to do something different. So I decided that I was going to make a podcast, mainly because I love podcasts. I watch a lot, and I thought that I could kind of imitate some of the genre conventions that I'd been a fan of and been viewing for probably 3 or 4 years now. So I took the idea from Kind of Funny, which is a YouTube channel that makes podcasts, and then I also kind of married that with everything that I've known in space and like that whole realm of entertainment. So kind of like a show like Cosmos. So the topic of Cosmos delivered through the lens of Kind of Funny is what I wanted to create. So in terms of audience, I feel like you can kind of make an argument that it could fit for either a casual podcast listener because it follows the genre conventions of a normal podcast, or it could follow and kind of garner the attention of someone who's more just interested in space exploration and space travel because of the topic, but necessarily doesn't enjoy podcasts or isn't really exposed to podcasts that often. So the broader audience appeal, I mean, I feel like it is already very broad, but if this podcast would, fingers crossed, become popular and people would actually start listening to it, I feel like people could just be interested because not only do we talk about space and all this information, and you can kind of learn a lot about our perceptions through it, but you can also just kind of get some enjoyment out of it because I think there are humorous parts and I think there are entertaining parts throughout. So I already spoke a little bit about the genre, but just to kind of explain it a little further, the podcast genre is a unique one because it is mainly oral, in the sense of you're listening to the thoughts and opinions, and you can listen to this type of media without actually using the visual aspect at all. But the reason that I chose Kind of Funny and mimicking them is because they videotape their podcast, and that adds like another interesting level of detail to their projects. So I thought having a video of us actually speaking would be fantastic. Um, and I think the podcast, another really like beneficial aspect of the podcast is you can enjoy it primarily as an oral person. So it makes my audience a little bit, makes it more convenient, I guess, for my audience to view it. So for example, if someone wants to cut their grass and they have the YouTube app on their phone, they can look up the YouTube app, put in their headphones, and listen to the entire podcast. Listen to the hour of podcasting while they're actually doing their lawn work. Or if someone wants to sit down at night and watch the video on their YouTube on their laptop or something, they can do that as well. Furthermore, you can take one of the reasons why I ended up going with YouTube. Well, two of the reasons, I guess, should elaborate. Number one, YouTube has a lot more exposure in the common conscious than Emace, to be perfectly honest with you. Everyone that I asked about Emace, no one had any idea what it was. The view counts on the Emaces that were the most popular weren't where I wanted them to be, and I just thought podcasting on the Emace wouldn't be as effective, simply because YouTube already is such a fantastic platform for me to not only put on my own content, but it is a place where people know that they can find podcasts already, whereas the Emace kind of crowd and the audience in Emaces may not be looking for that exact genre on that website. So one of the biggest things, one of the rhetorical effects that I hope my audience leaves with wouldn't really necessarily be derived from the actual podcast itself. It'd be derived from another video I made called Methods of Madness, which is me speaking just directly to the audience. It's just me in front of a camera shooting in Johnston Park down the street from Moravian, actually. So the thing is, I made the podcast and I was kind of debating between really taking the reins and kind of honing in and leading the conversation where I wanted, but I ended up deciding against that and kind of wanting to have more of an organic, just natural feeling conversation. So I felt like not only would it be more interesting, but it'd be more of an honest project for a viewer. So what I did with this Methods of Madness video was just explain that if you look at this video beyond the entertainment value or beyond the face value, and you kind of analyze what each of us is saying and use that as a tool, kind of like I like to describe it as a litmus test for how people my age perceive space exploration. So if you look at it through that, that's kind of the rhetorical effect that I want my audience to think about. I just want them to be able to think more deeply about what space exploration is and have a better understanding of what people my age actually think of it, because I feel like we're having a resurgence in interest in space travel. So I kind of wanted to just ride the coattails of that movement and kind of create another analogous media artifact that people can use. So when I'm thinking about the multimodality of my project and what digital rhetoric truly is, based on everything that we've learned so far this semester, I feel like my podcast is a great example of using the kind of rhetoric that we've talked about and not misusing it. So you said earlier at the start of the year that rhetoric was kind of a dirty term. People thought of it as being like a negative thing that people use to influence other people, and it's not honest and it's not genuine, it's not fair. And I feel like I've really focused in my podcast on making sure that it is fair and as honest as possible, because it would have been a lot different and the product would have been a lot different if I would have just taken complete control of the content that I was creating and told my peers and the people on the panel, like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what I'm going to steer the conversation to, so I can get these specific 3 or 4 things to kind of come to the fore. But instead, I was a lot more laid back, and luckily for me, I feel like a lot of important things did come to the fore. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, I think I've made quite an effort to make sure that it is as organic and as generic. Well, generic is the wrong word. As organic and as free-flowing and as honest as possible. So I guess my reflection on the podcast, and I guess the whole course, I kind of want to do the whole course, to be honest. It was tough. This was one of the most unique courses I've ever taken, hands down. I did a lot of things that I never had any experience with, using a Storify, scanning social media, making a podcast, all these things, making a WordPress even that this video is going to live on is just something that I didn't expect I would ever be doing, but I feel like there's things that are extremely important, especially with the way our world is becoming more technologically oriented. So I'm just really grateful that I was able to do these things. And I feel like if you look at what liberal arts education is and what Moravian thinks of liberal arts education as being, I think really it's all about being able to dip your toe into many different pools of water and understand many different things and have a broad spectrum. And that's essentially what this class was. Not only did we learn how to use so many different things, but we were also constantly just taking in people's arguments, taking in the rhetorical appeals that they created, and then applying our own lenses and looking at them through our own eyes, and kind of as rhetoricians understanding a whole huge array of other people. So I feel like the scope of this class was immense. I feel like it was boundless, honestly. And I'm just really happy with the whole class, and I hope you're happy with the way everything turned out. Honestly, I hope you like the podcast. I hope you think it is enjoying um as entertaining as I do, because I don't know, I really enjoyed making it, and I could see my friends and I making some more podcasts, probably shorter in length, honestly, with a wider array of topics. But overall, I really liked it. I really liked the class. I hope this reflection is sufficient. And thank you so much for everything.